Welcome to the Power of Music podcast, brought to you by JM International. Get ready to explore conversations with those making a difference through music.
Hello and welcome to the Power of Music podcast, brought to you by JMI, Jeunesse Musicales International, the global network of NGOs that empowers young people through music across all boundaries. In this episode, we're joined by Robert Manchin, sociologist, economist, musician, and cultural leader whose career bridges the arts, policy, and social research. Trained at the Baroque Conservatory and the Franz Liszt Academy, Robert began as a professional musician with the Hungarian State Philharmonic Orchestra before moving into academia, teaching across the US and Europe, and later holding senior leadership roles at the Gallup organization, directing global research on well-being, culture, and emerging technologies. From 2015, he served as president of Culture Action Europe, championing the role of culture in building democratic, inclusive societies. He also founded the Stone Center for Applied Social Research in Croatia, bringing together public policy, music, and the creative arts. We revisited Robert's early memories of JMI, including the first local JMI chapter in Hungary in 1960, and discussed the value of being useful to others, the link between music and identity, and the challenges of today's poly and meaning crisis. Robert also shares his thoughts on the attention economy versus the music economy, and how music can help us navigate an increasingly complex world. As always, if you enjoy our content, don't forget to subscribe, like, and rate the podcast. We hope you enjoy the episode. Thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. First, as always, and I know your journey has been long and with many different twists and turns, can you share a little bit about your journey into music?
It started when I was 5 years old, and I was. I would say not the only child, because my sister was 12 years older, and my other sister was 22, and my other brother was 24 years older than I was. So it was I can say that I was born into a family of 6 kids, but I knew 4 of them only, and by the time I came, I was more a kind of surprise kid. When my mother was 45, they were not expecting any more boys, I guess.
Just surprise bonus.
The surprise moment. And the family story goes that, it was just at the end of the war. This kid would not survive. My father died at the same month when I was born. So my mother was there with a newborn, but it was a boy, and her previous boy died by an accident. So it was sort of a privileged life being a mama's boy at that age, and she wanted to make sure that while she's a widow and doesn't have an income, at least her boy would learn something. So she found somebody who was a hungry bachelor music teacher who needed some dinners, and in exchange for dinner, he was teaching me violin. So that's how it started. And when you are 5, 6 years old and playing the violin, all the neighbors and kids, what's a cute thing? And I did what I was expected to do. And at the age of 10, the whole thing changed a little bit, because at that time I was joining an orchestra in the music school with a very charismatic and young music teacher who was much more than a music teacher. So by the age of 14, 15, he was giving us some samizdat literature, and in the intermissions of the rehearsals, we were talking about, what a 15-year-old is talking about the meaning of life and philosophy and Hinduism and whatnot. So music was always sort of connected for me. Both was this small orchestra and something which was beyond music. By the way, that was 70 years ago. And we still have members of our amateur chamber music orchestra today, who are the same age as me, from the same youth orchestra, which is sort of funny when you think of it. That we will have a concert in the 2nd of August in Hungary, playing the usual thing, Handel concerto grosso, a little Vivaldi cello, and whatnot. But like an extended family, sort of.
Do you still play the violin?
Actually not.
Mm-hmm.
The reason is that in this orchestra, whereas when I started, I was a first violinist, so to speak, the concertmaster. But then there was no viola player. So Otto Thiel was his name, said, Robbie, you have to learn the viola because we don't have viola player. So I started to learn the viola. It's almost like a joke, I don't know if you know this musician joke. If you are not a good enough violin player, you will play the viola.
Mm-hmm.
If you are not a good enough viola player, you have to learn the double bass. And if you are not a good double bass player, you will be the conductor. So I stopped at being a double bass player because then we didn't have a double bass player as an orchestra. But I was sticking with that one. And in Hungary you have a music system where after the elementary school, at the age of 14, you have to choose which middle school or high school track you take. And I was not sure if I want to be a professional musician, but I knew I want to play music professionally. So I didn't go to the gymnasium of the music conservatory, but I was going to the Bartók Conservatory for double bass and a normal gymnasium or high school. So I finished that one. And then I realized I wouldn't be a good violinist anyway in order to be on the market. And I applied because I was very much interested at that time. We are talking about an interesting time in 1960 to 64. That was the time when the first reforms in a socialist communist country happened in Hungary. And sociology was a forbidden fruit, so to speak, because you had Marxists, you don't need this kind of bourgeois bullshit. And so, of course, I was interested in sociology. And the closest was, at that time, there was no sociology education, was economics. So I went to music. I went to the university, and I was accepted. And there, I organized. I was always a kind of organizer guy. 1963, no, 1965, because I went to 64 to 68 to the university, and 65, 66, the first jeunesse chapter in Hungary at the University of Karl Marx, which was sort of funny. And we had that was the vice rector of the university, who was a big fan of music, and he always wanted to have an orchestra for the university, and he asked me to organize one. And I was it was economic university, so I was a kind of transactional guy, and I said, okay, if you help me to get permission that I go to the Academy of Music, to the parallel to my studies in the economics university, I will do that. So it was a big thing that in socialist times, even your first job was defined by the state where you go to work, and you had to be on the track of doing that. But allowing two things at the same time, that was a no-no.
So you actually used the power of negotiation early.
And the power of music.
Exactly.
If you are talking about the power of music.
Wow.
And so I had this kind of schizophrenic life ever since. And so when I finished, first I finished the university, a year later the Academy of Music. But my professor of double bass at the Academy was at the same time the director of the National Philharmonic Orchestra. And again, another, how did you ask? My track or my path to
your journey
to the music. My journey led me to get a job as a sociologist. So I couldn't give up that one because that was the Academy of Science, really my dream job. And my professor said, we need a half-time guy to the section of double bass section. I don't know how it is today, but at that time, you had to do 28 service units, so to speak. A service unit is a rehearsal or a concert, doesn't matter. Usually, for a concert, they had 4 rehearsals. So, a month, typically, you had 8 concerts and 32 rehearsals, or less, 28 or something like that. And having a half-time guy meant that they didn't have to work so much. And it was ideal for me because I said, okay, but I pick the concerts I am playing on. All the professional musicians don't really care so much what they are playing. But for me, to play with Claudio Abbado, or Henrik Schering, or Carlo Zecchi, or something like that, it was a huge thing. So I picked my concerts, and that was my full-time, half-time musician. But at the Academy at that time, my director said, well, it's, what kind of business is this? Only the gypsies are playing music. Not very nice. Make up your mind. Are you a scientist or a musician or what? I had a very good friend who was also a amateur musician there. She was a very a very influential sociologist at the time, and she was said, "But Comrade Kulcher," that was the name of the director, "Comrade Kulcher, Lenin said that in communism, in the morning you will be working, in the afternoon you will be a philosopher, you will have a much richer human life. Robbie is just rehearsing for communism." It didn't work. So I had to choose, and then, I had to really make up my mind if after 4 or 5 years among professional musicians, you learn that it's not that glamorous work what from the outside you see. But ever since I stayed close to music, I would say. So that's my short or long, depending on your definition.
What I hear is that throughout your journey, you have been able to put yourself in sort of, you could say, unique positions, doing the double studies, then playing the double bass, part-time, being able to pick. What would you say is your quality or your personality trait that made it sort of possible to look for these opportunities and to go for them?
It's a good question, and I myself was thinking sometimes on that one, that growing up in a marginal position, my mother was deeply religious, and in the small religious community, it was more like an extended family for us, going to this, and they treated me like that. At the same time, since my father was killed by Russian soldiers, a story which my mother never let me tell to anybody. So I had my little double life right away, a little secrets, and giving you at the same time a strong autonomy, even as a kid in a communist country. People sometimes don't understand that no matter what authoritarian or dictatorial or whatever society you live in, you still have your individual autonomy, control of what you think, have a double take or a critical, you might say critical thinking, right? So, for example, that was accompanying me and it prepared me for a life where I could always trying to look behind the surface, so to speak. My first professional sociological work was about the methods of content analysis. So while I was still in university, and that was the reason I did get the job as a sociological research group, I analyzed, which at that time was 25 years of pop songs. So I went to the archive and found out what were the top 5 pop songs in each of the years since 1940 till 1965, and try to look at the text and go beyond the latent. Go for the latent text from the manifest, what they really mean when they are singing, why people are responding to that obvious things. Same thing, analyzing the news. In in that system, you really lived in a double life, so to speak. We were not interested in what the newspapers were saying. We were interested in what the newspapers were not saying. That's something very different from an American mindset, I learned later. I remember at that time I was already working for an American company, and it was the Iraq War. And the whole American population, including the professionals, intellectuals, who blindly trusted Colin Powell, who was their hero. I think he was a foreign minister, secretary of state at that time or something. And he made a speech at the UN saying that we know that Saddam Hussein has, I don't know,
weapons of mass destruction.
Exactly, weapons of mass destruction. And when I said, bullshit, there is a proof. He's not, Robbie, how can you say that? Colin Powell said that one, So it was such a shock for them that here's a guy coming from a communist country and questioning their heroes and the trustworthiness of their institutions. How much change, right? Just in the last 30 years. They learned the hard way. And by now, nobody is trusting that kind of news sources anymore or institutions. Anyway, you were questioning of where is this double thing is coming from.
Yeah.
I think this is really the socialization of growing up in a society where you cannot speak your mind, but at the same time you don't want to lie even. So you rather shut up or mumble something, not to lie, but having your own second thoughts.
Thank you. So maybe we can take the bridge now, create a bridge to your presentation that you just gave here at JMI Global. And I wrote down part of a quote or two quotes that you used from Kodali. One was about being useful to others, and one was about spiritual necessity. Can you tell us why you chose these two on the slides, and maybe also in relationship to what you have called the polycrisis?
Okay. You catch me. Because indeed, one of the things, as you get older, you go back to the roots of your values, and you go back questioning what is the most important thing. And I was wondering what kind of message can I subtly plug in without preaching. I didn't want to preach.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one of the most important things what Kodai was trying to say, or one of the most important things, is quoting this in the speech for the GMI meeting in Paris. Being in Paris, he was referring to Gauguin, that you have to be you were useful or something like that. So we have to do something which is beyond our own little world, beyond our own amusement, something which helps outside of my little world, so to speak, helping, not to use big words, but really being useful for whatever the situation you are in. So I could give you something. And I think music is something like that. So it's not just that I enjoy myself, but I am sharing it and giving you something. The other one is even more, I would say, important. in a sense of defining what is the time we are living in. And this is something which we shy away from talking too much. Because we lost the narrative, we lost the type of supporting worldviews which were explaining the world to us. That led to something which Kodai was calling a spiritual crisis. And that spiritual crisis is really the root cause of how we are responding to the world around us or the people around us. I'm shocked that intellectuals and people are buying up the same kind of propaganda for war, which happened more than 100 years ago, where we were going into the First World War, then again into the Second World War. Europe suicidal mission to destroy what they have built up. And now we are again in the same position. And that's because we don't have a firm basis on which we can sort of differentiate between important and less important values and what Kodai was talking, it was about the music education is much more than learning the instrument. It really cultivates your soul. We don't even use the word soul anymore because we are so much afraid of that. It's really a post-enlightenment world where we are living, where we want to explain everything rationally, and we are pardon the expression, but we are scared to shit that these firm foundations are slipping away, and we don't know where to grasp. So I think this was Kodai's point, that music is much more than it's a spiritual foundation. It's much more than a rational teaching of certain facts.
Some of the people have called this time in our lives a time of domicide, which has happened in various moments in our history, that we don't feel anymore at home in the world. And if you don't feel at home somewhere, you maybe treat the planet not and each other and your neighbors not anymore in the way that we should. And what I hear also in this necessity and being useful, some people have called that one of the most important things in our lives is that we experience mattering, that we matter to something beyond us. And a question that people can ask themselves to see if they experience that idea of concept of mattering in their life is the question, very simple: what would you like to be here, continue in this planet, in this world, when you're no longer here? And then the second question is, how much of a difference are you making towards that right now? And if you can answer both, what do you want to exist after you are no longer here in this planet? And how much of a difference are you making in preserving that or playing into that? That is a good way to feel if you're mattering. So I was going to be a bit mean and ask you, what would you like to be here in this world when you are no longer here?
You are not asking easy questions here.
Sorry.
No. Of course, you can give a cynical, superficial answer saying that who cares when I am not here? At the same time, I met somebody 3 weeks ago who is like 50 years old, I was thinking, I'm talking to a 50-year-old. And he said, do you remember when you were taking us with your faraway bus to excursion? Sorry, no. Oh, it was one of the most important experience of my life. We are still talking about that. So that you were willing to take us small kids and treat us like friends and taking up to the Slovakian mountains. Did I do that? So it's, in a sense, that said, okay, if I made such an impact, I am conscious of the fact that did I make similar good impacts on others as well? Or working and building up a company and not changing the personnel for 15 years and trying to help them to develop. And they are still coming back and saying, oh, can we get together again? I think that there is something there which I am proud of, or should be, I think. I don't know if they die, if there is anything left behind, but definitely that the fact that this orchestra I was talking about is still there and still playing. I know that I am inspiring other old guys. If Robbie can go, I can go as well. No matter that I am, 75 or 82, and I shouldn't be because I don't know, I'm not practicing enough. But going back to the Kodai quote, to be useful for others is something I think that I could be proud when I am not here, that somebody is saying, oh, that was a guy who was useful for others.
And maybe that throughout generations, there will be people that are useful for others in every coming generation.
I think this is the only the audacity of hope, right? This is really how much we can do. I don't know if we can do much more in this very manipulative, divided world, but at least what you were talking about, the being home idea, right? And one of the for some 10 years I was in sociology, I was writing about proletarianization. This is a long word, but the idea was that what the communists wanted to do is to create a proletarian from everybody. But what does a proletarian mean? It means that you have no other way of independently live your life than to sell yourself to somebody. And I think that what is happening is this, what the capitalist society couldn't achieve with proletarianization, because you still has some remnants of a middle class here and there, even if they are complaining that they cannot keep up anymore, and they are precarious work and losing their independence activity. The communists were even worse, because they were destroying all the communal links what you could have. Home meaning that you are rooted somewhere. It's the same way as Engels was writing about the creation of British proletariat by driving away people from the farmlands. The same way the communists were trying to do kolkhozes and taking away all the land from the peasantry to create proletarians from everybody, and to destroy all possibility of uncontrolled youth movements, only if you were a member of the Communist Youth Organization, which meant you had at least one or two spies in your little chapter who are reporting on you.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't organize anything. So I resisted. I still could finish university using resources from here, there, music, this one, that one. But the resistance to that proletarianization and to keeping the control of your own life, I think, is something what music was able to help me. And I think it helps others as well.
Can you share a little bit about the two concepts that you mentioned in the presentation of Chronos and Kairos, and why you believe that this moment, 2025, is another Kairos?
So that presentation was not really for sociological or philosophical or historical analysis. But there was an underestimated German philosopher, Karl Jaspers, who were writing about axial periods. Axial period is something in history which are happening, I don't know. An axial period was between 500 and 600. That was a time when a lot of things happened. That was Muhammad coming to Mecca. That was establishment of the Catholic hierarchy, a huge shift. Or even 500 BC. At the same time, you had the Greek, and you had Buddha, you had Christ. And the argument is that probably we are in an axial age again. And you have all kinds of thinkers, not just Jaspers, who are saying the same thing. I don't know, Lenin or Gramsci are saying, you cannot rule like before, but you are not able to have a new way of ruling. No, that's maybe not this one, but the meaning is something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was saying this one, that when you are thinking about 80 years of change, then it is, on the one hand, it's a Chronos time. Yes, you can put a timeline and you can mask certain points. I don't know, 1968 was a turning point. In Hungary, it was 1964, 67, when we joined the first socialist country after Yugoslavia, an international organization like Jeunesse Musicale. So they were shifting paradigm. It was immediately taken back, but still it remains something. Right now, Kairos is when you are recognizing that you are living in that Chronos timeline, a special point which has a huge meaning, which is helping you to see the world suddenly in a different light, and of course yourself. So it's really a time like a fork in a road. And that's a proverbial road to Damascus. When Saul became power, it's really when you suddenly see the light. And in this light, your own life is suddenly very different. And you see much more clearly of where to go. And that is not independent of you have to see that. And this is why I was saying that we are in a Kairos moment when we are planning for an organization, even like the Jeunesse Musicale, of where do we go from a situation where the whole economic constellation around us shifting in just 1 or 2 years' time, that we have to rethink of where we are going. I was talking after the talk with a gentleman who is head of the Jeunesse in Canada, and he's saying, well, the Canadian society have suddenly awakened and found a new identity just because the southern neighbor told them that think about whether you want to join us. Same thing is happening in Europe. Unfortunately, this is not the forces which are trying to keep us from switching the fork are strong, always much stronger than it's much more harder to change identity or to find new ways of living than the inertia of staying on the road where you had been.
So if we are at this turning point, or Kairos, the advent of AI, the potential value lock-in in our AI systems, which is dangerous and tricky, ecological crisis, war crisis, but also personal crisis of alienation, mental health crisis, lack of meaning. And you also mentioned I call it the crisis of the attention economy, and you kind of contrasted that with the music economy. What do you think is the role of music or music economy at this moment? Or what should it be?
Well, I'm reading a very interesting Substack by Ted Gioia. And this whole idea of how AI and related technological developments are changing how we are consuming music is going back to the same idea of if music is on TikTok and the attention span on TikTok is no more than 5 seconds, then what kind of music we will have in the future? And of course, you can generate 5 seconds of music with AI. I was playing with it, and it scared me. It genuinely scared me, because just with one click, I can shift the mood of the music, the style, the instrumentation, everything. And without a good music education system and whatnot, are we losing what we have developed over the millennia of them? And that is also connected to my other concern, which I was not developing too much, but how the wisdom which had Plato, Aristotle, Confucius, you name it, about the difference, the connection between societal harmony or societal situation and how is it impacted by different styles of music. It's something which we forget. When I started to have this crazy idea that I can combine my sociology and my music things together somehow, which didn't work out. But because I had kids and I had to earn a living, and I went for working in a field. But it's still, the original idea is one of the founders of sociology, Max Weber, was writing on sociology of music. Few people know that. But he was analyzing similarly to much later to Theodor Adorno on how different musical systems are related to social structures. We were listening here to the pentatone layer of music, which is a pastoral society. If you listen to a Korean old folk music, it's hard to differentiate with Hungarian folk music. So there's something to this Asian character of this crazy Hungarians, I think. But it goes back to that level where societal structures and musical structures are related. And in this respect, the surf tone system of Schoenberg, which Adorno adored, is a perfect reflection of the early 20th century breakdown of societal structures, right? Nothing, no well-tempered clavier anymore. It's everything is the same. It sounds like a modern, but it's really a postmodern concept. That, there is no such thing as C major. It's every tone has its own right of being living. But I'm sorry I'm talking too much, and I don't,
not at all.
Not answering your question directly.
That's more than fine. It's very, very fascinating and interesting. I do want to bring it a little bit back to JMI.
Yes.
Toward the end of this interview. What can an organization like JMI do, or what values should they focus on, or what would be your advice to an organization that is also living 80 years, maybe has their own kairos right now, a reflective moment, looking ahead for the future? What would be your advice?
One, realizing that the economic system of music industry is shifting, and we cannot rely on the same funding sources of international organizations, which had helped a little bit, even if we are complaining, but still, when I was talking to people here, most of them had applied for some kind of project, and that project was, of course, tied to certain keyword which had to be repeated in the proposal on the right positions to apply, but still. And we have to realize that these international organizations, even if not immediately, but in 10 years' time, will be gone. So we have to go back to the roots of what is we want to keep the music alive, and how the communal aspect of keeping and helping others not to be isolated. I mean, as a Gallup guy, I was tracking the loneliness epidemics from year to year, where you have 40-50% of young people saying there is nobody whom they can turn to. They put on their earphones and listening alone and reintroducing them to the joy and the pleasure of being together and making something creative. I mean, creativity had to be taken back from the AI and practicing yourself, not just as an individual, but together. So that's one for Kairos recognition for GMI, that serving others, as Kodai was saying. And the other one is to take care of your own soul. Know yourself, as some Greek guys were saying, and try to use the music to express and connect with others. Maybe this could be for that moment.
Lovely. If people want to connect with you potentially or continue this conversation, can they find you somewhere? Are you online?
Not much.
Good for the soul.
Yes, I'm trying to preserve my sanity by not. But of course, I am on Facebook, so Robert Manchin.
As always, the very last question: what is the power of music?
It is just that, to shape human life, and to bring people to a community, and share that kind of experience with others. I think that's a communal aspect. I think it's much more important than we realize.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much for listening. If you want more information about JM, or you would like to get involved, visit www.jmi.net. At JMI, we are on a mission to make the world more musical. That's why we created Mubazar, a digital platform that helps us manage all our musical activities across 80 countries worldwide, connecting musicians with opportunities to grow both personally and professionally. If you are a music professional looking for a better way to manage and promote your music activities, check out Mubazar. Created for music organizers, by music organizers, Mubazar allows you to run music competitions, workshops, camps, auditions, masterclasses, awards, events, and much more. Mubazar offers custom application forms, payments for your activities, jury tools, translations, analytics, and more. Mubazar is fast becoming the best place for musicians to find and apply for music opportunities online, and you can sign up today for a free organizer account by going to www.mubazar.com, registering, and then requesting to upgrade to an organizer on the right-hand menu. For more info, don't hesitate to get in touch via support@mubazar.com. It would mean a lot to us if you could give us 1 minute of your time and rate and review the podcast. In case you have any suggestions or would like to be one of our next guests, feel free to reach out to us through the JMI socials.